Ontario just posted its first population decline since Confederation. Not a slowdown, an actual decline. And Toronto lost more people than any other city in the country. Nearly 80,000 people left the Toronto area in the last 12 months. That is roughly the entire population of Newmarket gone. Now, some of you watching are thinking, okay, that is the federal immigration story, right? And Ontario policy story. And you'll be partially right, but here is what nobody is connecting yet. This population shift is not sitting in isolation. It is already showing up in the Toronto rental market. It is reshaping the resale market, and it is creating an opening for buyers in the city that has not existed in years. I'm going to walk you through all of it because the headlines are focused on the number. What they're not covering is what it actually means for you if you own a home here, or if you have been sitting on the sidelines trying to figure out when to make your move. So let's get into what actually happened, because there are two stories running at the same time, and most of the coverage is only telling you one of them. The first story is the one that Ottawa created. The federal government made a deliberate decision to cut back on non-permanent residents, international students, temporary foreign workers, that kind of thing. And Ontario got hit harder than almost anywhere in the country. Ontario and BC both ended 2025 down about 0.7% each. Meanwhile, Alberta grew. Roughly 461,000 temporary residents left Canada on a net basis in 2025. An outflow from Ontario and BC drove most of that. The second story is one that Ontario and Toronto created for themselves, because it's not just Ottawa pulling people out. Toronto is also pushing them out. StatsCan tracked the largest domestic outflow from Toronto on record. Nearly 80,000 people moved to other provinces or other parts of Ontario in a single year. The majority headed to Alberta. Affordability, cost of living, housing, that's what they're chasing. And for the third year running, Alberta has been the top net destination for interprovincial migrants in Canada. Alberta, roughly 28,000 net. Talk about Calgary and Edmonton. There's lower housing costs, no provincial sales tax, oil sector jobs. Atlantic Canada, roughly 18,000 net. Talking about Halifax, Moncton, St. John. A detached house there, roughly 350,000 to 450,000. Detached. BC Interior, roughly 15,000 net. Talking about Kelowna, Kamloops, Vernon. Remote workers cashing out Toronto equity for lakefront at half the price. Ontario, non-GTA that is, roughly 19,000 net. Talking about Barrie, Kingston, Niagara, Prince Edward County. Close enough to visit, far enough for affordable housing. So you have the federal government pulling temporary residents out from the top, and housing costs pushing established residents out from below. And both of these currents are running through Toronto harder than almost anywhere else in the country. Now, let me tell you what has done to the rental market, because this is where things get interesting. For basically my entire career in real estate, the Toronto rental market has been brutal. Sub 1% vacancy for years. The bidding wars on rentals. People offering 6 months upfront just to secure a unit. And that was normal. It has been like that way for over a decade. And when CMHC released their 2025 rental market report, the numbers stopped me cold. Toronto vacancy hit 2.5%. That's the highest in over decade, and not since before the condo boom. And it's not just one thing driving this. It is two things hitting the same time. Supply and demand going in opposite direction simultaneously. On supply side, thousands of new purpose-built rental units and investor condos completed in 2024 and 2025. And these are the projects that broke ground 3, 4, 5 years ago when the market looked completely different. And now they're showing up whether the market wants them or not. So on the demand side, the non-permanent residents who drove most of the rental demand for the last decade, gone. I'm talking about students, temporary workers, new arrivals who had not quite settled yet. And almost all of them were renters. When that population contracted, the rental pool contracted with it. So what does this mean practically? Average asking rents for a downtown Toronto 1-bedroom are down about 8% year over year. Landlords are offering things the city has never offered before. We're talking about 1 month free, 2 months free, signing bonuses, things that would seem like fiction 3 years ago. And that shift has a direct effect on the ownership market, which is really what I want to talk about. 80,000 people left. The ones who stay get the opportunity. I'm trying to get this channel to 600 subs and I'm about 75 away. If you find this useful, I would appreciate your help. Hit subscribe. I put out new data like this every week. I want it in your feed before the next one drops. Here's the part that ties it all together. Because when most people hear vacancy rate or population decline, they think landlord problem, renters market, and they tune out. But the ownership market is being shaped by the exact same forces. Think about who was buying in Toronto for the last decade. Two big groups: investors who bought small condos because the rental math worked, and renters who were so exhausted from competing in a sub 1% vacancy market that they jumped into ownership just to get some stability. Both of these groups stepped back. The investors pulled back because they cannot justify the numbers when vacancy is at a decade plus high and rents are falling 8%. And renters who used to be burned out, they have choices now. Nobody is panic buying out of the rental market when landlords are offering them signing bonuses. Two of the biggest buyer pools in this region have gone quiet at the same time, and that is showing up in inventory numbers. TRREB reported over 12,000 active freehold listings in the GTA as of March 2026. That is up roughly 45% from a year before. 45%. Months of supplies for freehold houses, 3.8 months. Anything above close to 4 is a balanced market. Above that is a buyer's market. And this is the thing I keep saying to people who ask me, when is the right time to make a move? You're never going to see the bottom until you are looking at it in the rear view mirror. Nobody can time it. But when you have got a market where investors have stepped back and renters have stepped back, inventory is staying 45% above normal. Prices are down in most categories, and sellers are really having to work for it. That is a setup you do not see often. Let me give you 3 practical things depending on where you're sitting right now. If you own a rental property, run the numbers today, not the numbers for when you bought, not the rent your current tenant is paying. I mean, what the unit actually rent for if it was vacant tomorrow in today's market. What the unit next door also offering 1 month free. Then look at your renewal date. A lot of landlords locked in at 2% during the pandemic. Now they're coming up for renewal at significantly higher rates. Combine falling rents with higher mortgage payments, and the math can flip on you fast. I'm seeing people walk into these renewals completely blind. Do not be one of them. And if you're holding a property that is cash flow negative and you've been telling yourself, do you not want to sell at a loss? I understand that. But think about what that equity is actually costing you every month versus what it could do for you redeployed into a move up. If your condo is losing $500 a month and depreciating about 6 to 9% a year, you're paying for the privilege of watching your equity shrink. The move up math might surprise you. A $175,000 loss on a sale can be offset by a $200,000 discount on the purchase. The gap works in your favor. Run the numbers before making the emotional call. And if you're a buyer who has been waiting, this is the most leverage you had in years. Rates have come down. Prices have come down. Inventory is elevated. Sellers are working harder than they have in a decade. And the hard part about waiting for the bottom is what you do not see until it has already passed. If the mortgage math works for you today, and you're planning on holding for the next 5 to 7 years, the population story actually works in your favor. You're buying into a softer market before the long-term growth tailwinds eventually returns. Toronto is still a global city. Immigration still exceeds the outflows. Long-term demand is not disappearing. But right now, there's a window where people who left created inventory. The rental market created leverage, and the ownership market is softer than it's been in a decade. That window will not stay open forever. Cheaper house, bigger lot, lower payments. I get it. But there are costs that do not show up in Instagram posts. I'm talking about income drops. Average household income in Toronto is about $110,000. Halifax, $76,000. Kelowna, $82,000. Unless you work fully remote at Toronto wages, your income drops 25 to 40%. The cheaper house comes with a cheaper paycheck, career risks, remote work policy changes. Companies are calling workers back. If your employer mandates 3 days a week in Toronto, and you live in Kelowna, you have a problem with no easy solution. And here's the other thing, re-entry costs. If you sell it in Toronto at today's prices and try to come back in 5 years, Toronto prices will be higher. Your re-entry cost will be about $200,000 or more. That Kelowna house saved you about $1,100 a month on your mortgage, but the income drop cost you $3,500 a month. The net math does not always work the way the spreadsheet suggests. Don't get me wrong, some people who left made the right call. Some will be back within 3 years. The data does not tell you who is who yet. 80,000 people left. That's real. And for every one of them, a listing hit the market or a rental unit opened up. If you're staying in Toronto, the people who left just made your next move easier. The question is not whether to stay or leave. The question is whether to stay in your condo or condo townhouse or stay in Toronto in a house. That window is open right now. It will not be open forever.